I chose Abused Deaf Women's Advocacy Services, ADWAS, as my organization. While researching for one of our classes last quarter, I found this organization, and then the more I looked into it and explored it, the more impressed I became with it. This organization goes above and beyond and is constantly finding new ways to branch out and reach as many people as they can through their work in various communities. They work tirelessly to support and advocate for victims and survivors of crime. Is there contact information? They do have the hotline, so it's 24 hours, 7 days a week. The Deaf National Domestic Violence Hotline advocates at ADWAS. They answer video phone calls, instant messages, and emails. Their experience in the field of domestic violence for deaf survivors and their extensive training enables deaf advocates to provide crisis information, education, information, and referrals. There's their mission statement. So, Abused Deaf Women's Advocacy Services empowers deaf and deafblind survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and harassment to transform their lives while striving to change the beliefs and behaviors that perpetuate violence. We provide comprehensive services to individuals and families, community education, and advocacy on systems and policy issues. So they're striving towards a healthy community free of violence and oppression. Their population served, they are deaf-centered. So they acknowledge its unique and valuable position as an organization run by and for deaf people. Their work is centered around a deaf perspective, creating deep cultural and linguistic capacity for all members of deaf communities. We recognize the intersectionalities of identities within the deaf and deafblind communities and create fully accessible services. I did find while I was researching this that there are quite a few websites dedicated to ADWAS, which does mean they're able to reach many people. They did all vary in some ways and offer different information with varying details about their mission, vision, and programs. So if you start with ADWAS, there's within their website, adwas.org, there are subcategories. Even within those subcategories, there's more. So you kind of go on a deep dive of information as you're going through their website. How it all began, Marilyn J. Smith established Abused Deaf Women's Advocacy Services in Seattle on March 25th, 1986, following the suicide of a local deaf woman who was unable to get help within her community. Marilyn was a rape survivor herself. She got angry and decided to do something about it. This organization is the first of its kind and provided help with no issue of access with direct communication and interpreters at the ready. An emergency shelter was established, the only one in the nation. And then in the 5 years since that started, not one person seeking help for domestic violence ever went back to their situation, which was really amazing. And then ADWAS is the only deaf domestic violence shelter in the country that has supportive housing. It is nationally known, and not just in Seattle's deaf community, but in all deaf communities. And it's just grown a lot over the years. It started in a basement, and now they're huge. Structure. So their board, they have a board. So there's a leadership team that has 7 members and an executive director. They did just go through a transition with their director. So they do have a new one down here that she's listed at the very bottom. And then their board does fluctuate with how many members it has. So right now, this is where they're at. COVID has affected them a lot with that. A lot of people are working from home now, and then it's kind of changed the structure a little bit. And then they've lost some people that have been transitioning out of the working there and into other things. And so they're welcoming some new members. Board responsibilities: influence and develop policies, participate in fundraising, build community relationships, provide budget oversight, participate in strategic planning, attend 6 board meetings annually, commit to at least a 1-year term, publicly support the work of ADWAS, and then represent them occasionally at external events. The current staff is as listed here, just kind of tells the jobs available as well within the organization. And again, the staff fluctuates depending on now COVID, and they're restructuring some of their programs. So with the board, I was reading through our book Congress on page 163, where it talks about what it takes for a successful board. So with constructive partnership, mission-driven, strategic thinking, culture of inquiry, independent mindedness, ethos of transparency, compliance with integrity, sustaining resources, results-oriented, intentional board practices, continuous learning, and revitalization is just spot on with ADWAS and how they run. So statistics and milestones. So this just goes over some data about who they've served, training and education, contracts that they have, the housing program, filled capacity. It's been really, really successful. Then deaf and hard of hearing individuals are 1.5 times more likely to be victims of relationship violence in their lifetime. 1 in 3 women and 1 in 10 men will experience domestic violence in their lifetime. The domestic violence hotline has answered over 5.5 million contacts since lines opened in 1996, with an increase of 46% since 2015. And then there's a website here with more of the statistics and more information on that. They celebrated 35 years of service and counting. Strategic planning. So, the ADWAS development team adopted a new fundraising approach. This aligns with their values. This approach is called the Community-Centric Fundraising, the CCF. It focuses on elevating and unifying communities, more self-exploration and progression. And then there's 10 principles there. They hosted their first agency virtual retreat under new leadership. This way they connect with each other, increase wellness, self-care tools, discuss how to make the programs and services truly accessible for all, and how we can hold ourselves accountable and be transparent about how we're living our core values. They're partnering with Cascadia Deaf Nation. So there's 2 trainers and facilitators. They train the ADWAS staff, and then that's only for certain staff. And then basically they're just trying to be as inclusive as possible and then work together, not be divided, and being unified, moving forward the best way that they can for their community. And just looking at goals, strategies, priorities, reviewing and revision, behavior and communication, make sure it's aligning with their mission and values and vision, and then the diagnostic and all that. So here's some, so with the strategic planning, their efforts, there's also volunteers. So there's a direct service department, a building department, a development department. So these all work together. They take volunteers, they take interns. There's a lot of job opportunities. The core values are being deaf-centered, dedication, integrity, social justice, and confidentiality. So centering around the deaf perspective, creating cultural and linguistics capacity for all deaf communities, committed to excellence, integrity, just respecting honesty from themselves and each other. They handle a lot of highly sensitive information, so you have to respect informed choices and just communicating with people. The programs and events. So they have a bunch of different things that they do. Again, COVID has kind of thrown things a little, so they've been adapting to that, still trying to get people involved. So they do workshops. There's a deaf summer camp, which was put on hold briefly. I believe it's back in action now. There's just some changes with COVID protocols. The Hope and Justice is an annual gala that they do. This with COVID, they have changed it. It's about 5 hours long. They have a silent auction, a live auction, and a formal dinner. So this year it's a hybrid event. So people that didn't feel comfortable showing up in person, they could reserve an air table so they could host at home and virtually participate. Yeah, there's workshops. There's all kinds of things. At this website down here, you can look on there, and there's a lot of things that will show there as well. The social problem and need for ADWAS services and how they help is a huge need for their services. They are free of charge, so that means they're available to all people who need them. It's the only agency in the United States providing 100% fully accessible transitional housing with on-site support services for deaf and deafblind domestic violence victims. They help by advocating. They have a children's program. They now are engaging a deaf men project. So it's helping understand violence against women, creating a positive environment in the deaf community, and then emergency shelter, confidential, available up to 30 days for those escaping a violent situation. With this, the deaf communities are extremely close, and this creates barriers for victims of domestic violence. Is due to lack of privacy and fear of other people finding out about the abuse. So this can be a huge deterrent for a victim to reach out for help they need. So it's really important how they keep stressing confidentiality, and then even on their website they have basically like an escape button. So if say a perpetrator comes up, they can easily escape the window that they're in, so they can't see where they're looking to get help. How they help more, so counseling, education and outreach, K through 9 education, education for hearing agencies, professional development, supportive housing, positive parenting programs. So it's really well-rounded, everything they do, and they try to come at it with all angles. They really look for gaps in services and then try to fill those as well as they can, and try to go even above and beyond with as much support as they can. And then they're big on prevention. So with all the education, like the younger, the K through 12, recognizing what sexual assault and date rape, dating violence means, bullying, technology safety is really important. Funding sources and marketing. So administration matters, donations, help the staff. That goes through the children's programs, advocacy, counseling and housing. There's mobile advocacy, there's donations, enable them to reach out to people within the marginalized communities where people feel safe. There's impact of housing assistance for survivors with health issues and medical bills. They made it hard to pay rent. They have helped provide rental assistance, so medical bills could be paid. Therefore, it gives them relief to so they're able to maintain stable housing for their families. But they obtain money through, so you can sponsor legacies, make a bequest, check donations, Amazon Smile, fundraising events, online donations, donate stocks, securities, donate your car. There's coupon birds, make a pledge, payroll deduction program. So there's a lot of options for helping them out. Board leadership practices for accountability. So there's the board orientation and education, CEO oversight, ethics and transparency, board composition and board performance. So there's written assessments, there's an inclusive board recruitment process, there's conflict of interest policies, there's formal written assessments, again, for the chief executive annually, formal orientation for new board members. There's written agreements, so they're clear on their roles, responsibilities, and expectations. So they're pretty clear about what they expect and hold each other accountable. And then here's some more about their tax information and the board information. So it talks about their regular board meetings. They can do special meetings if they need to. There's an executive committee by the board, so if there's actions that they need to consider, they go there. And then, yeah, the pledge of commitment. So there's a lot more to do here. With the effects of COVID, so it's made it harder where people can normally reach out. There are a lot of times they're home with their perpetrator, and because of restrictions, they can't escape, or there's no safety plans. The abuse may escalate with isolation, more contact time, financial abuse due to lack of work or employment. Co-parenting is challenged due to lack of childcare or needing the person for support. And then over to the right, this chart, the amount of calls that they got after COVID started, the first, I believe it was 4 months, was the same amount as the whole year of 2019. So it was just incredible how many more calls were made during that time. The finances, they didn't have anything available. Just 2019 was the most recent I could find of their annual reports. So this just shows their income, expenses, their assets, and they are a 501c3 organization. There's a 990 form is available on GuideStar, and then other forms there if anybody wants to look at that. There's some news articles and journal articles I found with intimate partner violence with the deaf population, deaf victims' experiences with intimate partner violence, the need for integration and innovation, journal articles, and then some in the news, some about advocates stepping up for the community during the pandemic, and then deaf survivors of domestic and sexual violence. There's a video with a little more about ADWAS. And, sorry, and that's about it there. I did want to say, so as far as human services goes, this organization is thoroughly inclusive and goes above and beyond to meet its community's specific as well as basic needs, so everyone feels safe and heard. The concept of self-awareness in our textbook, Schweitzer and King, connects here, as it says, plays an important role in helping professionals fulfill their responsibilities effectively and responsibly, which is page 122. I think it's important to not just think in terms of how an organization would function or what its needs are, but also keep in mind who they're advocating for and look from their perspectives as well, which they do. What was most impactful for me was to see how far this organization has come since it started and where it is now. It started in a basement, like I said, and now its practices are being implemented across the United States. The expansion of services is pretty staggering to me in that ADWAS is constantly looking to improve what exists now. And if there's a need or population that is not being served, they find a way to make it happen. And that they also have programs in place to help prevent domestic violence. So they're really involved in teaching their community about important issues like Black Lives Matter, and it's just entirely inclusive. So the gaps I see, I didn't really see too many. I had tried to get in touch with them. We did have some technical difficulties, so I wasn't able to speak with anyone, but we did try. And then other than that, I mean, they really do address a lot of things. So that's it. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.